Our Dean, Caesar, thank you together with your team, with Raymond Mutura and the team for inviting me in this very auspicious occasion, talking to your alumni and distinguished guests from various families. And as you know, all of us come from a family. As you know, all of us wish well for our families. And that's why I am eternally thankful to God that I chose a career that serves the family, and I chose to take myself in the direction of serving families. Why serve the family? I think, Caesar, you took the words out of my mouth. When you look at a foundation, if you have a weak foundation, you have a weak building. It doesn't matter how much concrete and steel you put at the top. If the foundation is weak, that building will have to come down. There are many things you could change. For example, you could change the structure at the top and change walls. But if the foundation is weak, then you certainly have a weak building. And we've seen a lot of what weak buildings do to people. They lose all their wealth when the building collapses. So thank you very much for introducing us here and giving us the opportunity. I'm the CEO, as mentioned, of Moran Capital. I have colleagues here with me, Vera. Vera is our Director, Strategy and Finance. I will mention that she's my wife because we are a family business as well. Thank you very much. 18 years we've been married, and thank God we have 4 children. And they are keen to join the business, but in different ways we will discuss. I have with me, because we have professionalized our business, Executive Director, Institutional Business, Bwana Washira, sitting there, with a lot of experience. Thank you very much. Peter has 30 years experience in managing assets for some of the largest funds in this country, in this region. And I have a host of other people who are around here and will be here, who can talk to you about the issues that we'll compare today. And this is exciting. Talking about succession planning, I am second gen. So in what I know, I am a second generation of 2 businesses. One very successful and one not very successful. And I tend to study the outcome of both in my business, and I've tried to understand why both have the characteristics they have. So one is a large real estate business, development, and very successful, and should have been maybe today 1000x. But because of the initial challenges that family businesses, so including my dad, some uncles, the conflict within and the competition, I can see has diluted the value significantly. So I want to say that I see the challenges from a very personal space, but we have also been able to find ways to transition some of the challenges into manageable situations. I have also seen very successful family business, which has helped the family develop significantly, that there is nobody in that family who will suffer, at least financially, for the next 5 or so generations, because the structures were put so well that, in fact, other than even laziness will not save you from success in that family. Even, I tell you, even laziness will not help you, because the structures that have been put in place are so rigorous that you just, even if you failed and fell off for a short while, you will be brought back onto the fold, I assure you. That happens to be from my in-laws, who you're the 3rd or 4th generation. 4th generation success, built by somebody who was very detailed. I mean, I know my in-laws down to great-great-grandfather. I have their pictures. I don't have my own grandfather's picture. But I have the great-great-grandfathers, their names and where they are buried and the order of any business they managed. So I look at the success down that line, and I can tell where in other places we may have gone short. So as I start, I thought I would make that intro so that I can relate to where I do come from in terms of seeing the experience on both sides. But I will also now just refer you to a presentation so that, again, we are orderly. Thank you to the business school for even allowing everybody to be able to join us. Some are streaming live. So thank you very much. Moran Capital, we are, as I said, an investment advisory firm which focuses on the family office. And which services do we offer to family offices? There's wealth management, we have real estate advisory, private equity, and private banking. So I will define those elements shortly. And I'm the CEO. I'm the guy who they have to give a bit of pressure every now and then. Let me just talk about Africa. The point of this is to first of all put a picture to why are we having this conversation. I talk about Africa because I'm an African, therefore I am part of the African family. So I do have to talk about Africa. Africa is said to have robust long-term fundamentals, which include 1.7 billion of our population. It includes 40% of the world's resources sitting here, at least the natural resources. We are the fastest growing urbanization in Africa. So if you are thinking about opportunity, those are fundamentals that need to be very clear. But one of the things I wanted to bring out, and I think it's somewhere there, global wealth of private money, the ones in family pockets, is $204 trillion. $204 trillion. That's private wealth to families. What can be attributed to Africa is 1%, which is 2.4 trillion for all 1.7 billion of us. Now, there needs to be a question as to why are we there? And there needs to be a question as to how do we get out of that? Because there is wealth. But if we don't manage this wealth that we are talking about, 40% natural resources, which will translate in the next few years into trillions of money, we are going to lose the opportunity to give our families a better future than we have had. And that is where succession planning comes in. Moving on. You talk about Kenya, and Kenya itself, family-owned businesses account for 60% of total employment. 60% of total employment. Now, what does that mean for you and me? It means we have employed yourself, your brother, your mother, your in-laws, all these people. We create jobs in what is called the medium, small, and micro enterprises, which is talked a lot about. But more importantly, some of these businesses run significant numbers, over $100 million in turnover for some families, and some over $500 million. Family businesses are not a small thing. That's what I'm trying to say. And that's why they need to be given the position that they deserve. The family-owned businesses, of course, are in various sectors, construction, manufacturing, retail, transport. As Moran, we manage over 700 families. And they cut across any industry you can imagine, doctors, pharmacies, anything, food, retail, hospitality, any industry. That means families, and you know very well, if you look at what you're holding now, a pen, you know it has a family behind it. I think you understand. Hako will have come from a family. If you look at after a nice meal, you end up in the comfort areas. The paper in there comes from a family. Most of you must have believed that butter was a Kenyan family, right? It is a family business, but maybe not Kenya. These businesses are employing and creating success. And the question we are going to be addressing here today is, where is your success? I think there is a discussion as to where does this conversation fit in. I have some data, I have a conversation I need us to have here, because the conversation we are having today is a matter of moving from a business which has the entrepreneur to a business which the entrepreneur moves from being jack of all trades, right? I remember when you start out your business, you are part of even making the tea when the guests come. And I remember when I stepped out of a very high office in Standard Chartered Bank, when I showed up in my office and the clients came in, I started looking for the tea lady when the clients came in. And I looked around and then I realized, where? There's no tea person here. And then I needed to print some application forms, and then I looked around for somebody to send. And I was like, where is this person who prints paper? Where went you up? And very shortly, I also got KRA writing a few things to me. And I thought, my goodness, I even have to deal with KRA. I just set out to start a business to serve people. That's what you set out to do as an entrepreneur. When I set out to start the business, I set out like what I understand my dad did. He set out to start a business. The idea of moving the business into those successes we are talking about is not normally your everyday in the front of your face. It tends to be you are so much in the grind that professionalizing the business is not your first objective. I remember about 6 or 7 years ago when we had to professionalize our own business. And I had to sit at the feet of a business structuring expert. And the questions, I thought, what's going on here? He asked me, first of all, what valuation do you think your business will have in 10 years? And of course, I said some number based on my traction, where I was at the time. I said some random number, like I think, if I see 5 billion, I'll have done well. And he told me, you're such a failure. This business, its peers are in tens of billions of dollars. So the reason you will not get to the tens of billions of dollars is because you're measuring your business on your own ability. You have not thought of the structures that support your business to be a $10 billion business matching up with peers. And those are the things we need to discuss. While I am an expert in managing money and running that space, the fact that I needed to put structures to get the business to somewhere where I had not imagined is the reason I am happy to be here today. Because we are now comfortably on the journey to the reality he put in my mind. There is structure to it. So I want to talk about wealth management. I was discussing how you move from being entrepreneur, the person who owns a business, who does everything, you're the jack of all trades, to being the manager, where now you start having what we call major tensions. Because you move from you handling everything to introducing other people to manage the business with you. And then you move from just being in the management space to being a professionally run business, which is essentially some of the issues when we were doing a case study, for example, I have brought my wife into the business. Did we actually have a HR contract which says how much she's paid? Because the day we have a bit of an altercation, what is the fallback? What is the fallback? You know, I am very quickly happy to fire her, you know. So where is the agreement that you are in charge of firing her, right? What are the professional standards under which we should relate? And a lot of times when you ask the next generation to join the business, the struggle they are having is, how do I communicate with my parents? Because am I here philanthropically as a son, or am I here as a merited individual to manage this business? And I should be able to compare whether I should work for the family business or I should go and work for Google, which has contracts. So you'll be having to compete with your blood for their time. So professionalizing the business is something which is good, but also challenging. So when we look at the issues that people face, we as wealth managers, what do? We walk in and provide wealth management services. And wealth management services are a combination of the financial services through which you as an investor can create, grow, preserve, and transfer your wealth. Now, I know the word transfer is one of the things that disturbs most people. But let's first talk of the other issues you need to think about. There is investment advisory that you have in the business of wealth management. Investment advisory in simple terms is which investments should we get into and which ones fit our profile to generate the kind of income consistency we are looking for. So investments are not just for investment's sake, they are for determined income that we are looking for. You have risk management, which is essentially looking at how do we protect what we are making. I have a good story about McDonald's, which of course one of the individuals a client visited McDonald's and asked for tea, a lady, and got into the car. And what happened? When they drove off, the tea moved a bit and poured on the husband's leg. So he stepped on the accelerator fully. And the vehicle went and ran into another car and drove it over the edge. And when the insurers came, they had to ask for what is called a proximate cause. Who caused the problem? And the accident was drawn back to McDonald's. Why? Because their tea should have been at a temperature at which if it poured on the client, he would not have that similar reaction. That's the law for you. And what happened? They slapped McDonald's with a $3 million fine. Because nani aliwaambia muuze chai moto. Now, you as a business think that's not your problem. But I'm telling you, this is the law. If you're not careful about it, you can build value in your business, and then it's wiped away by some professional issues. So risk management is important. Retirement planning is important. It's part of advisory services. You have to think about retirement. I think one of the greater challenges that we face is that retirement tends to be far off from us. So even when you are building the business, you have to ask yourself, at which point will I translate this business into being able to support my retirement? But more critically, and maybe I will ask a question here, how many of you know how much you need for your retirement? Maybe by a show of hands. Yeah, okay. Right, yes, yes, okay. So maybe 20% of us already know. I want to question, why don't the rest of us know? Why don't the rest of us know? Is it because it's not coming? We are not interested to talk. Yes, it's a conversation that must be facilitated from somewhere, because it is one of the times that you live long with a lot of time to reflect about what you did and what it didn't help you achieve. Essentially, you are told you have 30 years to grow as a young man trying to figure yourself. You have another 30 years working. So, and these 30 years will then need to take care of some 30 years, thank you, that you will be trying to relax and not work very hard, which in some cases we want the family business to help us through. So I want to challenge you that you should have a number. You should tell yourself, I need to have 200,000, 500,000, a million, 10 million a month when I retire. Because then I will know what I am doing is traveling, and I know how to fund it. I will visit the Toshoshos, I know how to fund it. I will do philanthropy, I know how to fund it. And the question your business will be answering is, can it pay you 5 million, 10 million a month for the rest of your life? That is a very key driver to how you will maintain interest in that succession planning, because somebody will have to ensure you can receive the value over that time. Succession planning. We have succession planning, and we'll talk about it shortly, and estate planning, which people confuse with succession planning. Estate planning is a lot to do with now the actual, when I die, the distribution, which a lot of people confuse with succession planning. Succession planning is about management and ownership. We'll discuss that. But estate planning is about distribution of wealth and, of course, the issues around it, as well as tax planning. The next question I was going to ask there is, why succession planning? And succession planning itself, as most of you will accept, is not an event. It's a process. Why is it a process? It's a process because if you try to ask second gen, like Alex, to join your business, when it is already established and the processes are not clear to me, you're setting me up for what? You're setting me up for failure. This is a guy who walked in, alikula biashara. You know, those kind of comments. To see businesses which are successful, and we have seen them, there are many, the discussion started a while ago. Why does it need to start a while ago? As I said, you have to start transitioning the business, the management of it and the ownership of it. Now, the transitioning of management means the people know some things. There are things, I'll tell you about them. So one of the things is, how many processes support a business? How many processes support a business? Imagine you've walked into a business today and you've gone into management. How many areas would you be looking at for managing a business? Because this is one of the things that scare most people. You walk into a business, let's say Moran, I can imagine if I asked you to walk into Moran, we, through some partners that we work with, have listed about 360 businesses. If you walk into a business, there will be around how many departments? How many? Feel free. Let's throw a number. How many departments are there? 5, 10, right? There will be around 17. 17, right? You know, you're talking of finance, administration, marketing, legal, technology. You're talking of, you know, external services, you know, which given to the business. Now, if you're going to transition a business to me, and it has about 17 departments with consequent number of people who I don't know what they do, I can assure you, you are setting me up for failure, right? But if you are going to have a success, is ensuring that those particular departments, I have been trained on what each one of them does. You know the way we say start from cleaning, right? You started from being the cleaner. You went to filing. Actually, our daughter comes to our office regularly, and she's in charge of filing. Why do I want her to do filing? Because first of all, she knows what is required of client documents. She will also learn that there is required to be some form of order. She'll also learn how many clients are actually in this place. She'll also learn who coordinates which information, who gets which information. She understands the systems. Now, this is very important. And if then you're going to move to the next step, which is transitioning the ownership of the business, the person is now firmly aware and in charge of what happens within the business. The reason we have to approach succession planning with some gentle hands is that it's a sensitive space, which is very daunting. I can imagine when you are given a big business to run, like let's say your parents run a big manufacturing business. When you walk in, or let me even say when I walked into a bank the first time, the first thing they do is do what? They talk in acronyms. They talk of NII. They talk of names. If you want to be exposed as an idiot, walk into a business in the boardroom. You know, day one and you'll walk out. Because the complexity is being discussed there, which you will later on understand could push you out. Because people start laughing at you. How can we increase the CAGR? What is that they're talking about? So when you're doing the transition, just note that that process is sensitive and daunting even to the person who's joining the business. The strategy of succession planning is obviously early and advanced planning. You want to get them to buy into your ethos, your purpose for why the business exists. When the business exists purely for profit, you can hire managers and then suddenly you find that ethics start to disappear. But when you have people hired, I mean running the business for purpose, you will understand that it has long-term life in it. So when we are doing the discussion of succession planning, it has those elements where we want to start early. So what was I saying about succession planning? Remember, it is transition of management, but also ownership, which don't have to be done at the same time. It's an issue which, of course, is very sensitive and daunting. It requires early, advanced planning and talking about it, really, because I can imagine any parent talking about it. What are the feelings that they are having? The founders, what feelings are they having when they are having this discussion? What feelings are they having? Because, you know, I'm told to remember the psychology of wealth. The psychology of wealth starts with fear. That the fear of me giving you and then what will happen, right? So when you talk of you want to let go of this business, there is a certain fear which makes people very emotive and difficult to talk to. You may think the person, and I'm talking here maybe to second and third generation, you may think the person is just not understanding you or doesn't trust you. But remember what they call the psychology of wealth. They are having fear, right? And that fear may be from the fact that he came from a mau space, tulinyang'anywa mashamba, I have worked tooth and nail to get this business, and from the way I see you excitedly enjoying, I don't know whether this is going to survive. Remember that is in his mind, even as he's transitioning. So even you, even myself, I really talk to my parents with a lot of respect because I know they are harboring a lot of fears. And what if this is the guy who nyang'anyad his brother and his sisters? You know, these are fears. But also remember there is concerns around the people who are also being handed over. What if I don't succeed? What happens to me where my parents were very successful? So those are things that are running in people's minds, and that's why you need conversations that help people feel comfortable around succession planning. I will talk about the success factors slightly after. But if we move to the next slide, I want to talk about, for you as a founder, why should you have this critical discussion? For you as the next generation, why should you listen to succession planning and wealth management very keenly? In this slide here, if you look at where we are today, which would be somewhere around 2022, this side 23, we are facing a crisis globally, right? We are facing a crisis for very many reasons. I feel mercy for our president, because between the global issues and the local issues, you know, there's such a mix of things. But the issues we are facing now, this is not the first time they have been faced. If you look at COVID, you look at this financial crisis, in 2008, we had a financial crisis somewhere down the road here. We had a Gulf War. We had, if you go all the way down here, there was a Spanish flu that killed 100 million people in the world. They wore masks. Did you know guys wore masks before in 1918? They wore masks. They have actually found that every 5 to 7 years, there will be a crisis in the world. Now, if you have to step into the shoes of a business and you didn't know crisis is a regular affair, then you have a problem. Because probably you've been handed over, or you're handing over a business to somebody who has never experienced crisis, or you've handed over a business to somebody during a crisis, or you need to train somebody how to manage successfully to take advantage of a crisis. And if these things are not being discussed in your handover notes, you are being set up for failure. Successful families know that when you are discussing succession planning, when you are discussing how you'll be successful in this business, you must tell people about the experiences the last 100 years. You must see what happened. There was a global financial crisis. How did we get out of it? There is a COVID that happened. How did we take advantage of it? I have a family that quickly decided they are going to do the sanitizers. They are going to do the masks locally, because at the time they were in a different business. And they had to reorganize themselves to take advantage of this situation. But they did not close their primary business. It was put on standby. Because if you try at that time to do logistics, who's moving what? At that time, the supply chain was very affected globally. So they had to decide, what do we do locally that can move our business? So when you are thinking about succession planning, It is not just handing over the procedures. It's also telling somebody's strategy given the market cycles you expect. Every 5 to 7 years, my friend, there will be a crisis. You better prepare reserves for this business. Because if you don't have reserves, you will fire all your members of staff, and you know your key asset is HR. So you fire them, they go to the competition. What has happened to the business? It has collapsed because, not because I was not a good manager. The information was not passed to me regarding a crisis. If you move on, the next slide, please. I'm talking about the issues that really must drive you towards succession planning. The next one is what we call the investor life cycle. And this one I say is very exciting because it gives a certain illumination as to the reality of what we have to do. Now, when we are doing investments, the one thing we are very clear about, investors have a life cycle. You know, when you start your business, you know, your strategy is really accumulation. You're trying to grow just to get off the ground. The strategy which is used at accumulation stage, and especially when an individual is around 18 to 45 years, is what? It is one which has low capital, but what you're looking for is the highest margin. So the businesses you get into at that time, if I was in real estate, I would certainly not be found doing business of, you know, selling land in Runda. The capital requirement is not in favor of an 18 to 45-year-old. So the strategy there obviously starts differently. I have to buy those pieces of land out of Nairobi, put 18, 20 houses at a cost of maybe $1 million shillings, which 150,200 went into buying the piece of land, and another 500,000 or so went into building the houses and all the other permits. I spent maybe $1 million. But those 20 houses, I charge 3,000 a month, which is 60,000, right? And in a year, it's 720,000. The return on that investment, that capital of $1 million is available to somebody at this stage. So those are the kind of strategies you need to think, where can I employ lower capital, get the highest return? That is what you're thinking about. And at this time, it's easier to manage a business. As you're growing, you start doing what is called consolidation. You move towards how do we use the resources we have to get the highest return. We now can command some assets. And we don't need the time to be running from here to some remote place in Nairobi to collect rent. Because you can imagine, even as I grow old, I'm now 46 years old, the ability to collect rent in some places also starts bringing a few issues. Those gentlemen are strong, and my teeth are not as strong, so I don't want to be rocked, you know, mangumi. So I want to buy property in an area where, you know, it's a bit more easier to collect. So even as a business, as you develop your capital base, you know, when you're discussing your succession plans, you should be telling the people, as the business develops, can we also look at how we are changing strategy? We cannot always be at the bottom of the pyramid. We also need to upgrade. We can have a diversification, but we need to upgrade. As you move in to about 65 to 80 years, you're thinking of deaccumulation. You yourself have a lot of expenses, medical expenses, things that, you know, you need to travel. Even when you're having your succession planning discussions, the person should know, as you're managing the business, remember, as I'm getting to that age, my expenses are much higher. It's not when I used to sit in the office permanently. I need to go and see the Wajukus. I need to travel the world. I need to do different things. So my investment strategy, my business, must have the ability to start paying out assets. So the way you've done your investment structure should have the ability to deaccumulate, to pay off some regular income
to the beneficiaries or to whoever is in the business. And that last space, as I go to add 80 years, I'm looking at transfer. Now, I need to think of how I'm transferring management, how I'm transferring ownership. And why do I need to do that? Because I have said, if you have wealth to infinity, multiplied by 0, management and heirs, what is the value of the business? It is 0. You cannot have built up such success and then it cannot be successfully managed from yourself. So you need to think about succession planning from far, because at that time you will need to transfer it. This process is, I would say, a natural life process. It's not new to anyone. This is what tends to happen. I expect it will happen to me, and in the next few years, the largest wealth transfer in the world will happen, because those individuals who walked into the baby boomers, another 20 years, the world reports say, will transfer the wealth. You know, Warren Buffett is transferring the wealth. Bill Gates is transferring the wealth. Locally, we have many families have transferred the wealth. In the next 20 years, it's going to be the largest wealth transfer in the world. How prepared one is in terms of succession planning is really critical. It is not if or should we. It is a must, because that transition is natural. It will happen. So the next reason we have this conversation is because sometimes when we are discussing succession planning, and these 3 slides I've put here are just to stamp why we should have this conversation. All business does is generate resources, and resources, all they do is do these 3 things. They essentially manage contingencies in the household, they manage operational expenditure, and they manage growth expenditure. So there is no secret that people are discussing in families other than this is how we manage our business for these reasons. I know there are some people who say we have family business secrets, and everybody believes there's a secret. I want to tell you there's no secret as such, because this is what everybody is normally discussing. What do we have in reserve? Where is it? How secure is it? What are our operational expenditures? Who travels where? The children are in which school? How much is the fees? And the dog, how much are the dogs fed in this place? You know, these are conversations. But people think they are secret. These are discussions over dinner, over cocktails, over beautiful sunsets. These are the discussions people are normally having. Growth. Will we acquire our competitor? Maybe that's a secret discussion. But I assure you, even the competitor is thinking, are we going to acquire them? Right? So if you are wondering what the conversations are about, those businesses discussing various issues, they are about the income we generate as a business. This is what it does. So if you are asking yourself that my second generation will not understand the business, help them understand what the business solves. It solves our contingency, that we will never suffer. It solves our operational expenditure. You need to fly first class. You need to do these things. That is where the expenditure goes. You need to acquire a certain business. You need to acquire a certain technology. That is the conversation that people are having. And this is what family business discussions should be about and are about. Because this is the way you preserve the wealth through that knowledge. The sensitivity in family business, as told by Tagauri, is the interplay of these 3 things here. The fact that it's a family, it's a business, and we own part ownership and other people in the space. That is the source of tension. But I can tell you, because Raymond is here and his team, they are experts in breaking down this area. The conflicts, how do they need to be managed? So there should not be a struggle in your space because of the challenges that are brought in by the interplay of family, the business, and ownership. They will help you think around what documentation do we need? What HR practices do we need? Strategies for ensuring the generation is prepared to walk into the business. Which courses do they need? I think you have too many courses that they can join and be sharpened in. A lot of times, the issue central to family business, as Bwana Dean mentioned, is trust. To create trust is a matter of a lot of meetings and documentation, which you can be helped in this place, so that you can see what happens. I was making a comment to Raymond earlier, and I was saying, my wife and I, married 18 years, both of us in the financial services industry. The level of conflict used to be beyond fever pitch. And you know the conflict was about what? It was money. Yet both of you are experts. But when we sat down, and today I'm a family life coach, we found out the issue was the communication, not the money. The issue was communication. What does money do? When does it do it? How much of it? Who signs off the checks? When we sit a lot of times in alternative dispute resolution and those kind of things, a lot of times when you ask questions as to, did you sit down as a family and accept how this expenditure will be managed? No. One person made the decision. So like when things got thick, the other person was added in the decision because you found that the title required your approval to go and secure something. At that point is when you are informed. The company's shares had been committed somewhere, but you didn't know because you have one person to sign. But at the time when the liability comes, the board is involved in this discussion. So if you don't have trust, and trust is not a matter of the clothes I'm wearing. Trust is a matter of the documentation, the agreements that have been put in place. And those help a lot of people eliminate a lot of the challenges. Not all of them, but a lot of the challenges. So the interplay here of roles in family business, and if you are having some edge, the team at SBS provides a lot of programs to help you think through it in a professional space. Moving on. As we are sitting here, I know most of you are wondering, what does this mean for me? What it means is a lot of people want change. We want to change. I don't want to be the one who wakes up every day to go to this business. I don't want to be the one who figures the bills. My Mzee says, why do I always have to be the one to deal with all these? He has a word. Maybe it may not be understood here, but in terms of all these, now even the fact that I'm thinking about it in my mother tongue is a major issue. Because that's the way he says it. So I'm trying to think what is the what is the word. But challenges. Let me put it. Why am I always the one dealing with these challenges? And I tell him, you could let us help you with these things. So he already wants the change. But him to change, no, because he needs to tell me how did these problems emanate. How did we get here? So, and I've always asked myself, why doesn't he want to share? At least a while back, that's what I used to think, because now we have a very open space. And what I came to find out is on the next slide. It's an interesting thing. On the next slide there, the reason that he has a difficulty explaining stuff to me is because he wants to be safe. He wants to be safe that whatever I find out, I will not start kumpaka rangi. Where ulifanya hivi aje? You know the way somebody asks you, how did you just get yourself here? You know, the person who did not walk into the problem does not understand how you walked yourself into the problem, right? People want to be safe. They want to be safe that you will not, if you find there's a problem, you're not going to start bashing them and talking badly that ata uwezi patiana, please, your opinion does not count. You see what you did. You know, that's what tends to happen. The people who grow very large businesses have a lot of safe space that I can allow you to fail. I can allow you to fail because I know you are trying. You are doing what is needed. People want to be safe that when they step into the first generation's business, I will not find myself matched out on the basis that I was trying to inherit, you know, this kind of space. I want to be safe that when I walk in, I'm not going to find a board that is not ready to onboard me. I want to be safe that if I put my children's future into my second generation's business, and therefore I am, you know, depending on the school fees that comes from this business, I will not then need to go and beg somebody to sign the school fees check. And it's the only source of income in this family. I want to be safe in that space, to be able to say that my family has my back. That's a key thing. And how do we do that? You look at the needs of every member, the founder. What are their needs? The founder is thinking about the legacy that they are going to leave. They are thinking about financial security. They are thinking about philanthropy. They are thinking about their family. How will I leave the family? Those are things that are in every founder's mind. How do I manage those affairs? The second generation is wondering my identity. So who do people say I am? I was a doctor. I have now been absorbed into some milk business. So when I go back to the club, where jamaa wa maziwa, you know, it's not going very well. You know, we have a preacher, yeah, in the, you know, some of those industries he comes from. If you cannot talk the lingo of the place where you are trained, for example, you know, I took a discussion with him and I was asking him, what is sixth sector? Because there's a conversation by pilots that if you're not a pilot, you can't even add value in that group. So you can imagine now you've been moved from being a pilot to managing the, your business is now to collect steel. What is it called? The one for scrap metal. Now when you meet with your boys, that conversation, I mean, what's your identity? Who do you say you are? They are concerned about income. They are concerned whether this business will give me the same income as Google, as Safaricom, as the other business. So how have you secured them there? They are concerned with whether I will have self-expression in this space. I have come in, yes, I understand you developed the business, but will I have self-expression? Will I be able to say, no, let's close the branch that is in place X, because from what I have seen about the new market, they are now in this other side. Will I be able to have this self-expression? And maybe even I want to change the color of the boxes for the packaging. Do I have the latitude to do that? And these things are enshrined in some of the documentation. If they are at a startup level, they are thinking, do we have the capital to run all these affairs? As an entrepreneur, who else will come to help? Will the children be interested in coming into this business? So anytime you're walking into a family business, these concerns, when you call them fears and you see resistance, is because people, by nature, have what you call the psychology of wealth. They are trying to think, will it serve my purpose? The way to manage all these concerns is obviously to put a few things in place. Some of the things you obviously need to put in place are structures, processes, professionalism. You need to put HR structures. You need to put processes in place. How do we make decisions around packaging? How do we make decisions around where the branches will be? What is the average cost of a branch, so that you don't tell us to open in New York before we have sorted out in Africa? Those things need to be discussed. And mainly in your admin and finance, your operations, technology, marketing, and branding. Those 4 departments are very key when it comes to succession planning and issues to do with family. You also need to have strategic and difficult conversations. I have, your family constitution. I'm sure somebody will talk about that. You have a family council. You have advisory and management board. Now, we talk a lot as wealth managers to that conversation there. In terms of, just how these strategic conversations are had on the expenditure and those kind of things. But also the lawyers will help with who manages and issues on merit, on managing the business. But you also need to have regular reviews and updates. I say that the family in which I'm talking about, which I see a lot of success in managing, and a lot of the ones that I see, as I said, we have maybe 700 or so families that we manage. I can tell you the ones that I see a lot of success, right from, it doesn't matter whether they have polygamous scenarios, but there's something consistent in them. The level of engagement here is very high. They are called for meetings regularly. Every month, they're in a meeting. They have discussions. They have discussions about everything. They have regular retreats. They spend a lot of time together. What does that mean? It means that the key component of success here, which is relationship, is very well enshrined. And the relationship is only managed through regular meetings. You cannot, about trying to have a long-distance relationship. Yeah? The success of it is not very high, right? But I can tell you, they meet very regularly, some weekly. I know some families where we have to give reports because there are regular weekly meetings. So how often are your people meeting? What are the agendas? It's not just ugali, it's not just roti and other enjoying things. Are they discussing critical issues that endear the people to the business? That is very important because that's where survival and success comes through. I will finish with discussing maybe something which I'll pivot away from just succession planning. Succession planning is, as I said, part of wealth management. A lot of people invest everything in the successful business. But a successful business may have opportunity to be transitioned to another strategic, where we join another business. And at that time, my friend, you have bought your land in the name of the company. You have bought your house in the name of the company. Your car is in the name of the company. Now you have told Hewlett-Packard, HP, to buy shares in your company. And that company's assets include the house in which you live. The complications will be there. So what you need to do is understand that at some point you need to generate wealth through other diversified pillars. So that if it is maybe some securities, you have bought some extra, you're not just in the business income, you have other assets. Not all of them generally in the business. Because one time when you need to transition it, then there are complications at that point. You need to think, do I have some assets that I have now put into maybe some bonds which are generating regular income from government, from corporates? Do I have private equity? Have I invested in other businesses? So that in case I decided to sell off this business, then I don't have issues trying to transfer the business. This is important to remember, because it is critical that you have other lines of income, not just that the business, and if in the event the business went through distress, you're not fully stressed. You are able to have maneuverability because you have other assets. However, those who are running successful businesses always divest. They look at, how do I get into other businesses? I can buy into other people's businesses. I can get other assets. And as I grow older, I have brought my family in to understand what I've invested in and how much income it is generating. The considerations that one makes for those investments, we help them to do that. We help you to understand just where can I invest, what is the security around it. We'll take you through what are the primary investment considerations. Looking at other investments, understanding any business we are going into, and even as a family business, as I extend myself, there is the market and the regulation I need to think about, the structure and accessibility of these investments, the return profiles, so that I'm sure what is an in-specie return, so that there's a discussion of how do I expect this return, and you can obviously have this information so that you can take it back to the family and become the expert in having that conversation and other things such as cost. There's a simplified way to look at those investments. So I want to close it at just that space there that shows you have very many investment options as a business or as an individual that you can use to diversify your investment, so that even as a business, it's not just, there's something at the bottom of the balance sheet called what? Other income, right? So where does other income come from? It comes from some of these things. So that when there's a cyclical issue, as I mentioned, in business, you're not left exposed because your transport business had not had any other line of income. And then you cannot support your members of staff. You need to have an internal diversification into various opportunities. And we can help have those discussions. And they are important even as you transition your business to tell people to pay attention to that line of income. I want to stop it there. I can see we've run into our time. And I would really like to thank you for your patience, for the opportunity to have this discussion this morning. Thank you very much.